Let's talk some toys in here.
Hey, how's everybody doing today? It's the Man Child. Alright, so today for review, we're going to go over the new Master Universe Origins fan favorite Merman figure. So basically, Mattel is doing what they're calling reissues for certain figures. This Merman figure is particularly a reissue. Here in some of the images, Big Bad Toy Stores also has other past Origins issues like She-Ra, Zodak, the Merman, and I think Ninja is also going to come out. King Randor, also Trapjaw, which I also have here. It's a reissue, so you can see that in the corner, which maybe I'll do a separate review on that. Anyway, though, I did post some pics of this guy when I picked up Wave 11, Masterverse, and stuff like that, and I thought it'd be interesting. I thought maybe something would be different. I was kind of debating just getting another vintage-inspired Merman and card. And my card come bent, so if you see it's shiny, I put some packing tape. That's the way I fix my cards. If they're bent, I'm going to hang them. I don't know if I'm going to take them out. That's what that is. But I'm going to take them out of, I'm just going to rip them out of card anyway. So yeah, I got some requests after I posted the pics. Would I take them out of card, maybe review them against the original one? So I do have the original one. So the first Merman and Origins came out in 2021 as part of the Wave 3 series. And yeah, I thought it'd be a little different or something maybe, or just to get another one. And I don't see much of a difference. But if anything, it'd be fun to do this review because I never reviewed Merman. By the time, these figures came out early in the day, I wasn't really doing reviews then on MOTU. I did them like a year later, I started getting into them. So I never officially reviewed this Merman. I might have brought him in for like customs and mix and match and parts, kind of stuff I'm known for. But not only will I compare him with this original one, yeah, now I have the Lord of Power. Maybe we can do some Masterverse and have some fun with him later on. So taking a little closer look at the top of the card, so we still have the typical Master Universe logo, Merman, Ocean, Warlord. But you can see in the right-hand side now, as I pointed out earlier, fan favorite, to where the original one had like new for 21, I think it said. That's the only difference I see on this card. It still has the, modern posing, retro play, and all that stuff. Everything else looks the same. And spinning the package around, here's a quick look at the art on the back of this card. Yeah, look at that. Incredible. And I remember when Origins first, come around, and even to this day, that's some of the most unique, awesome art I've ever seen in packaging. Going back to the vintage art and the figures in the day. But here we go. So we have our typical Merman there. And what's cool with this Merman, I always like with that weird fish cat head. It's just so nostalgic. And that's what this Merman's all about. So, of course, we had the Lord of Power one out, which I'll bring and compare a little while when we get them out of package. That Merman looked more like the Merman a lot of us wanted. It's sort of a mix between something with the Filmation and what the comic book showed. So it was always weird, once again, getting our toys as, back in the 80s. And they didn't look like what they looked like in the comic books or the Filmation again, but something just so unique and nostalgic about this particular figure. That octopus, the sea creatures in the background, the way the light's coming through, and moving up to the top left-hand corner. Check that out. We got Battle Armored He-Man, Battle Armored Skeletor, and Spydor fighting. So, of course, we got the Battle Armored He-Man Skeletor and Origins later on. Yeah, I would have loved to see Spydor. I know in comments I read, a lot of people would really like to see that vehicle remastered for Origins. Who knows, and if one ever is created, it's definitely going to be like a Mattel Creations exclusive or some type of crowdfunding vehicle, I would assume. But I'd love to see one of those definitely coming to Origins down the line. Dropping down to the left-hand side, just once again shows the action features, what accessories it comes with. And then moving over to the right-hand side, so once again, we have our nostalgic cross-sell going back to the vintage, but what the Origins did. And so these were obviously all four figures part of the Wave 3 series. Now, as I already said, She-Ra is going to be a re-release. Assuming everything will be the same, but I know she has corrected knees. I already have one in package. I'm not taking her out, but they did fix the knees. We have our Merman. Zodak is also being released. And I'm assuming Triclops will be too, because he's another fan favorite that a lot of people want and couldn't get their hands on. Okay, so I got Merman out of package. Let's take a look at the comic book for people who aren't familiar, or you are not. Yeah, obviously, so it's the same exact comic book. And I know that because I still have the original one. I actually marked it because I can't even tell these guys are the books apart so far. Put a little mark there. But if you're not familiar, so yeah, Dimensional Doom, pretty cool. Always had unique art. I pause and take a look at it if you're not familiar. Yeah, this one, when the Merman first came around, he was early wave of Origins figures too. I remember, once again, look at these comics, were just incredible. Going back to the comics as a kid, these are even more detailed, and I don't remember if I even read them as a kid, maybe a little bit. It's just, always look at the images, but yeah, art's so awesome. Got Roboto in here. I think Roboto came out, and I want to say the next wave with, well, no, I'm sorry, Zodak was, okay, so we had Zodak, Triclops, Shira. Yeah, I think Roboto was the next wave, so hinted to that. But here's the old one once again. Just going to just breeze through it. So you kind of see the wording. All the images are the same, and I also bring this in too, or want to look at it again, being I still have it, because some of my early Origins were international release figures, you know, and they had no wording. Now see this? Okay, the cover's different. Yep. So Roboto was, I guess, part of that wave. He was like a alternate figure over, like, I want to say Zodak or something. And this comic doesn't show that. Interesting. And moving on to the new fan favorite Merman. Yeah, it looks exactly the same as the first release Merman from what I can see. I'll bring it out here. He's right over here. I'll compare him in a minute. But being this is my official vintage inspired Merman review, and I never did one. Yeah, let's just go over the articulation. So first, right, for people who aren't familiar, you want to take a better look. There's that head sculpt. Really cool. Nostalgic once again. Right, the cat fish head, I always called it. Yeah, you know, just basic paint, nothing over the top. I like the way the teeth is sculpted. You know, you sculpted the teeth in there, paint. As far as the articulation, go left to right, go down about that far and back. All right, just pop the head off. There's our typical Origins ball peg there. So putting the head back on, moving down to the armor, you have that typical, you know, vintage inspired armor, just a really bright yellow color. Has like these shoulder protectors here, like, or look like web feet or fins or something. That little jewel piece, same thing, like a fin belt. It's all part of the armor. It's not separate, right? So front and back, and of course it's same design as Skeletor's armor. So you're just gonna remove it, both buckles off, break that side, then just snap this little button part. And then the armor's gonna come off like this. Here's a close look at that armor off the body. So going back to Merman with the armor off the body. So once again, we already went over the head. We know he has waist articulation, still come part of the waist, nothing new. As far as the arm articulation now, I think everything's the same as the vintage figure. We go up, down, forward, back, spin at the elbow. You know, the elbow can straighten out or bend about that far up to the face. Comes with the, on this right side, the semi-weapon gripping hand, I call them. You can spin and the hinge joint goes in and out. The other arms are all the same, and it can pop off. You can see, so it's same pegs to, you know, customize the figure, nothing different. Okay. Yeah, and this arm's all the same as I said, but of course he has that open claw hand. I think like the vintage did. Now moving back down to the belt and loincloth, just he has a lime green color belt, yellowish loin guard there. As far as the leg articulation now, so I can go all the way out with a split, kick forward, go back, bend at the knee, spin at the knee. The legs are all the same. And then he has his, he had a Skeletor type boots, right? We know they can spin, boot can come off, and the foot can go up, down, and rock side to side, and boot can come off like that. And moving on to the back real quick, just look at the muscle aesthetics, whatever. Hey, look at that. So it still says Mattel 2020. So I don't know if this is just, yeah, a reissue figure. I mean, maybe that was just a regular printing on the first figure when he's come around, or these reissues are just parts laying around or something. I wouldn't think so, because I know the tooling, you know, they only store it for so long. But I think it's interesting. It doesn't say 2023. It just says 2020 on my figure. And as far as accessories, this Merman comes with the vintage-inspired, iconic, called a corn cob sword, a bone sword. I think it's the sword of rakish they called it. And throwing the armor back on for a minute, putting his bone sword in the right weapon gripping hand. Just a quick look at Merman all set up in his kind of a battle pose. That was something really cool too with the Origins when they come around or really start getting into the waves. Just be able to set up your figure with all this articulation or your diorama that the vintage couldn't do. I really like that with the Origins. And the other thing interesting too with this sword and this open hand is, I think as a kid as a vintage, you know, you're able to put the sword in his hand if you wanted to, because it had this guard to where usually his hands can only they're just open or just to use a shield, you know. So if you push the sword in hand like that, I don't know if you got to mess around with it, but he could still hold the sword in his hand. You could put another weapon in that other hand, you know. That's what's neat with this particular, bone sword. Okay, so moving on to some comparisons and mixing and matching of parts. So obviously here's our two vintage-inspired Origins MER-MAN figures. But who's who, right? So this is the fan favorite or newer one on the right side, and this is the the first release one. Yeah, I mean, aside, you know, the older one, I want to say Under My Lights. I mean, the colors look exactly the same. Something catches me almost like the first one, the original one. had a little more bluer tint in them, and this one's a little greener, which I really wish they would do with this figure, because it'd be easier to match parts with other Merman variants and stuff, but I think in reality, it's the same exact color. One's a little more glossier, one's just duller. That's just a factory thing. The armored too, though, but this one, they both yellow. This one looks a little more like just a dull color, and this one a little bit brighter in certain parts of my light. Just stuff like that. And I put a little mark on the bottom of his foot. You can see that number 1, because I can't even tell. I'll mix these figures up. I'll be lying. I'm like, yeah, this is the vintage. This is the fan favorite. So that's how I know. Okay, so the fan favorite does okay. You can see the face. The orange is a little more brighter, and this is a little on the dull side. I can see that difference. But that's all I really see between these, two different figures. Now, we already went over the fan favorite. Let's go back to the first release one. All right, armor's all. I'll take the armor off. We'll compare it real quick. But articulation's all the same. Left and the whole deal. Arm, I don't think there's nothing different as far as articulation. Hands, right? Waist pops apart at the waist. And yeah, legs go out with a split. All the same. Back, forward, spin it to the whole deal. This and if I can go up, down, rock side to side. There's nothing. I wouldn't expect it, but there's nothing different as far as articulation. And now I just took the armor off both bodies once again, compared the two. So this is our fan favorite vintage because of the mark on the bottom. Yeah, I mean, yeah, this one does look a little glossier and almost like a little more a bluer tint to me. Maybe not. Is it more glossy, if anything? I think they're the same exact color. But, just, I know it's silly. I'm just going to pop. Let's see, let's change these bucks around real quick. See what that looks like. Wow, that pegs a lot. Look at that. Okay, there we go. So, yeah, it turns the same. And so the glossier body on the Merman here, the first release. Yeah, the legs are dull on that one. And yeah, the legs, okay, they're the same on this. Yeah, everything looks really the same to me. Side little differences in just how it was manufactured with paint. Okay, so moving on, I snapped the waist back on. I had his foot backwards, all twisted up. Of course, there's our fan favorite Merman against the Lord of Power Merman. There was 2 different versions. There was also a San Diego Comic-Con one, which I have put away somewhere. I just kept I think it's just a regular carded version, because the other one had more details in the armor, and I think the color and the skin was different. So this Merman too. So this is more of the comic book kind of things you would see in comics as we were kids. Inspired, I want to say comic inspired Merman with that head, and then we got this one in the vintage line as kids. But see this one too. They made the skin's even a darker blue. Where this guy's skin's it's more green. Even though certain angles it almost has a blue tint, but it's more on the green side. So it's those two together. Now, it would have been cool. Well, we could have popped, switch heads around. Doesn't make sense because you're just getting the same body. Now, he has the yellow gloves, and of course, they're all part of the sculpt and just painted on. But what we can do, even the boots here, though, it'd be neat to change these boots out with this Merman, but then we still have the higher ankles are painted to match the body. So that's sort of out, but I'll do it anyway. So let's just mix some armors around. We can do the hands without the glove part, and we'll change the boots around for fun, see what that looks like. Alright, so here's a look with that Lord of Power Merman armored on our vintage inspired Merman. The belt was also a separate piece too now, so you just break the waist apart and put that on. I put the yellow gloves on from that figure. Obviously, we don't have the higher part, but it's okay. You can just use the hands. Has the same exact bone sword once again, but this is in like a darker goldish color. This is a bright yellow. And I left these boots on for the just for the moment, see what that looks like set up. Pretty cool. It's something different for this Merman. Now here's the same setup, just with the Lord of Power yellow boots, which, work okay. I mean, the skin tone up here, once again, is a little different in this, but it's not too bad under certain lighting conditions. Articulates, has all same articulation. Once again, it's a pretty neat design for this Merman. It's interesting that there's a couple different tones going on here. We have the bright yellow boots. This is the armor's goldish. I guess it kind of matches, okay, the belt, I want to say. And, of course, the gloves match that. So, at the time when the vintage Merman was around, people were reviewing them, which, again, I didn't. The Lord of Power one wasn't. So now we have all these cool parts to mix and mash. And now here's the Lord of Power Merman, head and body, of course, with the vintage-inspired armored sword in hand. I switched the hands out and then his boots. So you want to simplify this figure with the body and head. It could work because You can kind of get away with different colors, to me, as far as MOTU, with boots and hands and stuff like that, where it doesn't really, it could work, as opposed to where it would just be easy to switch the head over on the other body, but it's so off, the color, you'd really notice it. That's just to me, but once again, it's MOTU, you can do whatever you want. But this setup could work as well. It gives them a different look. And now I put everything back in the Lord of Power Merman, as far as the yellow gloves again, his sword, the feet, and I just left the vintage-inspired armor on without the belt. You want to take a look at that, try something, different once again. So for another quick comparison, this is the Super 7, I think Super 7 made this, Filmation Club Grayskull Classics Merman against our new fan favorite vintage Origins Merman. Yeah, you can really see what Merman looked like in a back in that Filmation cartoon. I don't remember though. He seems a little blue in his figure. I thought the Filmation might have been a little more on the green side. And his armor's way too big. I tried it earlier. It won't fit this figure. But I just wanted to kind of bring those in for comparison. And going back to the Lord of Power Merman, Lord of Power was a different concept before the vintage figures come around. It's sort of, you kind of see where the inspiration came from, just between all three figures and what we got between the vintage, Filmation, and this concept figure in the Lord of Power series. So real quick, I also want to bring in my He-Man and Master Universe mini comic collection master guide, which is just awesome. Look how thick that book is. Go on like eBay or Amazon, pick one up. But you can see, so this is a collection of the mini comics in a day, but in this larger book. And you kind of see, what Merman looked like in these comic images than what we got in the vintage figure. So more of that Lord of Power design. Here he is again, hiding in a rock. See the armor, the gloves, but the feet are different. He doesn't have yellow feet. He just has like ankle bracers here and then regular Skeletor, the Merman feet. And there's another image here as part of this comic books where Merman ripped He-Man's cross armor off and basically stripped some of his power. So in the Lord of Power concept, the armor that the goddess gave him is what gave him his power. It wasn't, the Prince Adam where he raised his sword and said, I have the power. So here's a quick comparison against our vintage-inspired Origins Merman against my classics when it's still in card. So what was cool with the classics is they gave you both heads. You can see the vintage-inspired head like this figure has, and then the Lord of Power head. The armor was more of the Lord of Power concept. Same thing with that trident. They gave him the bone sword. And this figure they made a little darker green. It was sort of like a mix between the blue and this color, but more to the green. So moving on, here's another comparison with the Classics Merman variant that came in part of a 2-pack. I think he was fighting Aquaman or something. I bought him loose on eBay. I just wanted the Merman. You can see his skin tones are really blue, going back to that Filmation one or what the Super 7 figure did. And once again, the Lord of Power set up yellow gloves, the whole deal. What I want to see is, I'm curious how this armored will fit, or if it will fit this Origins Merman. All right, and here's a look with the classic Merman armored on our Origins Merman, and I put the sword in hand as well, and it fits. It doesn't look too bad. It's back here. It kind of catches pushes the head forward. It's just you can bend it and move it around, but yeah, it works, and it doesn't look bad at all in this figure. And for fun, I threw the Origins armored on the classics Merman, see if it fits. Yeah, it fits perfect. And for one more comparison, I'm going to bring in the Masterverse 2.0 Merman, or the Merman that before he had the battle damage from the Revelation cartoon. The first release was missing an eye, which I put my own in. Didn't have armored. Yeah, scratches, battle damage. He was more on the green side. I put him away, but even that green on a Merman didn't really match this Merman either, because I remember reviewing, trying to mix parts around. But anyway, it's those two together. And let's see if the armor on this Merman works on the Origins Merman. And here's a quick look with that Revelation armored on the Origins Merman, and I put the sword in hand as well, and it looks pretty cool on him. It gives him a whole other look. A little bulky in the back, but it's interesting. Head still articulates, just slips right over the head. Sword fits in hand, pretty cool. And now for fun, I threw the Revelation Merman head on the Origins body, and it fits and articulates perfect. It's just, obviously, the color's way off from the body, of course, with the armored on. But it is MOTU. You can mix it up or paint it, and yeah, it's interesting. It's a shame that the colors with all the Merman figures didn't match up a little better, so you can mix and match parts between the Revelation Merman because the pegs fit, but that wasn't her intentions. It's two different lines, but we'll take a look at that. It's pretty neat. And then going back to the Revelation Merman, put the head back on, sword in hand. Of course, I put that Origins vintage-inspired armor on this figure, and it does work, but see back here, even with the bodies now, that they're they're more on the thin side compared to the vintage. You can't really get this together without loosening the straps and stretching it, but for the most part, it does fit and work. And for a little bonus comparison, I wanted to bring in a new cartoon or filmation-inspired origin characters like Beastman, He-Man, which I already reviewed, against our vintage-inspired re-released Merman. I think that's interesting because at the time, 2020, when this figure came around, these weren't even a thing, and they did change some of the leg, things in the legs and the body style, arms are changed a little different. They can technically stand a little taller, but you can still switch parts around with certain figures. So I don't know. I thought it'd be interesting to mix those guys up. And pointed out too is that this Merman still mixes pretty good with this Filmation Beastman just because of his overall design, aesthetics, stuff like that. Okay, so that's my overall review on the new reissued or fan favorite Origins first release vintage inspired Merman figure. So as far as what I can see between this fan favorite Merman, which is in the middle, of course the first release going back to 2020, I don't see anything different as far as articulation, color. I mean, you might have different tones in the skin and paint, stuff like that. It's just a factory thing, but it's all the same. Same thing with the comic books. Everything's exactly the same. They both have words in them, obviously. Words in international. But the back is different, where this has Roboto and this one doesn't. So I'm also wondering that all these figures have been announced. Side Triclops, I have a feeling he's coming to his fan favorite reissues, but maybe Roboto isn't. And that would have been neat if they did that, because like Merman, Roboto is another one, again, with a lot of these figures people couldn't get their hands on. So what's cool is that, aside there's not much different that I can see, it gives fans or people who started, getting back into the Origins line later, a chance to pick up guys like Merman She-Ra, King Randor, and stuff like that, and Zodak coming around, because these were some of the favorites as a kid. And hopefully these will also show up internationally, which I have a feeling they will, because they're just simple remanufactured figures once again. Not a lot of high tooling to these. But it was fun to match parts around with the Lord of Power and Classics and stuff with this vintage Merman, which, again, I never reviewed them. So that was fun for me and hopefully you guys. So hopefully this video answers all your questions. I appreciate everybody watching. Until next time, take care.